All right, we are Daf Eruvin, Eruvin Daf Lamed Zayin, very exciting daf all about Berira. Yeshivot will study this sugya for a month or more, this and related sugyot. So we don't have that much time, but we can use it wisely. So we are talking about the Mishnah, where someone makes two Eruvin, Eruv Techumin for boundaries, one to the east and one to the west, and he makes a condition: if the Chacham comes this way, then that'll be his Eruv. If it comes from the other side, then retroactively, because again, Eruv can only takes effect when it gets dark, but he's not going to know which way he wants to go until later. And even if the rabbis come from both directions, he could decide on Shabbat retroactively which one will be his. That was a Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda seems to only argue on one small point, that if one of them is his designated rabbi, then we assume that he would go in that direction. Okay, good. So here's the outline of the daf. You can see the outline has a lot. So we're going to be seeing a lot of different cases, but it's pretty well organized. The first question is, does Rabbi Yehuda apply Berera? We saw Tanakama surely does, but how about Rabbi Yehuda? We're going to see three different cases. Then Rabbi Yoseh, we'll analyze him in three different cases. And then we're going to ask whether Berira applies in, who does not apply it in rabbinic laws. It would seem, anyone who applied in rabbinic law for sure would apply it in Doraita. So we found that opinion. And while we do that, we discussed Rabbi Shimon. Does Rabbi Shimon apply Berira? And so we see various cases from him. So basically, that's the structure, looking at these three different Tanaim and what their stance is. And we're going to see there's a lot of contradictory sources, and we will try to resolve them. So that's the main outline. But on the way, we're going to see many different interesting cases that really test out the principle of this retroactive decision. Okay, good. So Rabbi Yehuda simply argued that one can choose which way he wants to, that his own rabbi takes precedence. And so now Rav says, quite a surprising statement. Rav says that our Mishnah, the version of the text in our Mishnah, must be wrong, because there is a baraita that's quoted by the sage Ayo. Ayo is nowhere else found. We don't know anything about him. His name kind of means, where is he? So we don't even know where he is. But in any case, he has this baraita concerning Rabbi Yehuda that contradicts our Mishnah. According to our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda applies the principle of Berira. But here he doesn't. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, En adam matne al shnei devarim ke'had, ela im ba chacham lemizrach, eruvo lemizrach. So he says a person cannot say, if I'm going to put two Eruvin, and if two rabbis come from both directions, then I'll decide which one to do. That is too much to say that he can retroactively do that. Rather, he can only have one step. If he comes to the west, then that will retroactively. So still a little bit of retroactivity here. So Gemara asks about that, like, what's the difference between these two cases? What's the difference between the second case, where two rabbis come from both directions, and there he says, no, you can't do it. Whereas if only one rabbi comes from one direction, then you say retroactively, that's what I meant. If you don't have berera, then you shouldn't have berera in that case either. So actually limits the case too, when the Chacham already arrived before Shabbat started, except that I didn't know. So the fact that I didn't know still doesn't make it retroactive. The Chacham did in fact come to one side or the other, and so I say whichever side he's already come to, that will be my Eruv. But in fact, if it was a case that he did not arrive yet, he's going to arrive on Shabbat, then you're right, it would not be good. Okay, so that's how we explain it, and according to this explanation, so now the Yehuda does not agree with Berera, and so therefore we say that the Mishnah is the incorrect version. So Gemara asks about this. Why'd you reject our Mishnah because of a Braita from Ayo? but a Mishnah should be stronger than a Braita. Why don't we reject Ayos Braita and say he must be wrong? Because look, we have a Mishnah where the Yehuda does apply it. No, we're not going to think that because we have now another source, Ditnan. Although it says Ditnan, which usually is a reference to a Mishnah, in this case happens to be that it is a Tosefta. I mean, the Mishnah has a little bit of the case, but the full case is in Tosefta, which is in Masechet Demai. Okay, so this is going to be a very important Tosefta that's going to really structure the whole rest of the daf. So let's pay attention to it. Halokeach yain miben hakutim. Omer, shne lugin shani atid lafrish harei hen teruma. 10 maaser rishon, 9 maaser sheni, umechel v'shoteh miyad. So someone buys wine from Kutim, from Samaritans, and so they have all together different laws. They don't accept Torah Sheba'al Peh, not even Nirim Ketuvim. And so therefore, we certainly don't think that they took Maaser, or Terumah, Maaser, whatever they did. I mean, they did have biblical law, so maybe they do something, but it's not the way that we do it. So we can't trust them at all. And furthermore, their vessels are not tahor vessels. So if someone gets this wine and he doesn't have any vessels with him so that he can transfer it and separate the wine, all the terumah and maaser, then he can do so in his head. He'll say the 2 out of 100 lug. He'll say 2 lugim that I will separate down in the future, tomorrow, when I am able to get some vessels. That will be terumah. 10 of the 10 lugim that I separate, that will be first maaser that goes to the Kohen. Another 9 out of that, was 10% after I took off 10, is only 9, is 90, so it's only, 88 here. And so 10% of that from maaser sheni, depending on what year it is, this would be 1, 2, 4, and 5, or if it was 3 and 6, then maaser ani. So then that will take that. Umechel v'shoteh miyad. And after I do that, I can redeem it. If it is in fact maaser sheni, I redeem it with a coin, and I drink it, and I could drink it right away. The point is that even though I didn't actually physically separate the wine, I say that my future separation will retroactively work from now. And so therefore you see retroactive berera. And that is the words that Rabbi Meir says it's good. However, 3 other Tanaim, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, and Rabbi Shimon, say it's not good. These are the 3 Tanaim that are going to structure the entire rest of the daf. Right? So first Yehuda, then we'll deal with the other 2. So right now you see that Rabbi Yehuda says no berera. So to review, we had the Mishnah in which Rabbi Yehuda does apply it. We had Ayos Beraita in which he does not apply it. And now we have this case where Rabbi Yehuda does not apply berera. And so now it's explaining we follow the 2. And that's why we said we have to reject the Mishnah in favor of these 2, the Beraita and the Tosefta. Okay, Ula, so that's one possibility. Ula, however, has a different way of resolving it. Ula amar Yomi matnitin says, no, I'm going to stick with the Mishnah, and in fact assume that Rabbi Yehuda does apply a berera. What about this Tosefta that you just said? Ula zuze katane. He's talking in pairs, and you got to punctuate it differently. Divrei Rabbi Meir ve'Rabbi Yehuda. These 2 sages do allow you to take the lug of wine in your mind, and it'll happen retroactively later. And Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon, they're the one who are osrin. And so you see, according to that, in fact, we will. Right, so according to the first opinion, we're changing the Mishnah, we're rejecting the Mishnah in favor of these 2 no's. According to Ula, we're changing this no to a yes by repunctuating it, and thereby accepting the Mishnah and rejecting Ayos Baraita. Okay, good. So that's 2 ways of explaining Rabbi Yehuda, and now we're ready to go on to Rabbi Yosef.
Rabbi, quick question on this.
Yeah.
Ula, is this a stama that is telling us how Ula reads it, or is this all Ula's statement? Like, are we deducing how Ula would read the Mishnah?
Oh, it sounds like Ula has a version of the Baraita, Ula Kataneh. he taught a beraita with this punctuation. So with that, if we have that punctuation, then we can do it all together differently.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Right, the Stam is applying Ula to resolve this question. Okay, right. It's not. In other words, you're right. It's not. He's not. They're not repunctuating it now in order to solve the question. You already had a beraita like that.
Yeah, because it says earlier Ula Amar, so it kind of sounds like that was his statement. That was the tradition of his statement.
Right. He said this, and he also has a beraita. So did he say both? Right. Did he say this, or did he have a this, and then we're applying his beraita to answer the question, or did he say this, and we infer that he must have had a beraita, or did he say both things? Right. Okay. Very good. Good question. I don't think I'm not sure if there's a way to answer that. I would probably, if I had to guess, I would assume that he has a beraita because this is a more unusual language, and the stam that is saying this response based on his beraita. Okay. Good. All right. So now to be Yosef, and berera. Is that true that he says there's no berera? Because that's what we said in this Toseftan Demai regarding the separating the lugim in your mind that will happen later retroactively. And the Yosef says he can't do that. Okay, this is talking about a woman who gave birth, and after a while she is ready to become tahor. She has to bring different things. If she's poor, she brings 2 doves. And so let's say 2 women who both gave birth, and they're both at the same time are ready to bring their doves, and they bought them be'eruv, meaning in partnership. This is a good place where we see the word eruv just in regular usage, right? So it means they joined their money together and bought a 2-for-1 package, or rather 4-for-1 package, because they need 4 doves. And they didn't designate these 2 are mine, these 2 are yours. One is a olah and one is a chatat, or they gave them all to the kohen, and they didn't designate this one's going to be mine, this one's going to be a olah. So rather, eze sheyirseh kohen yakrib olah, leeze sheyirseh yakrib chatat. So in that case, the kohen can decide, okay, this stuff will be from you, this one for me, and so on and so forth. Okay, the Mishnah. This is a Mishnah. The Mishnah, if you look in its original, says "Oshenatnu demek kinehen lakohen." In other words, they just gave them money. They, instead of buying doves, they put money in the box, that shofar, like we saw, and then the kohen will go and buy them and designate them. So it doesn't matter whose money was which; they mixed them together in partnership. So you see here that we apply berera, because even though they did not designate which one is which. The kohen chooses, and then retroactively, whichever one it was, that's the one that will be the one that they gave. And so this is the bioseh. So we have a contradiction. Amar Rabba hatam kisheitnu. No, that's not. That case is different. That's not retroactive. Rather, it's a tenai. From the outset, they're saying if you choose this one, then that'll be mine. If you choose that one, then that'll be mine. But it doesn't have to work retroactively. It happens at the time that the kohen chooses, and that's all fine. So well, if it's just making a tanai, what's the chidush? Kamash malan kidrab chista. Damar chista ela kinin mitparashot ela I belekichat be'alim I ba'asiyat kohen. So this is just confirming halacha that Rav Chista explained, that the bird's nest can become designated either when the woman purchased them and they say, I'm purchasing, this is going to be mine, this is going to be my chatat, or if they don't do that, then when the kohen does it, when the kohen offers it, that will be the time of designation. So there's no problem of the designation happening at the time of the sacrifice. It doesn't need to happen before, and therefore it doesn't need to be retroactive. Okay, so therefore this case is not determinate. So to go here, the bioseh, does he apply berera? Over here in Demai, he says no, he does not apply it. Mishnah and Kinim is not determinate, so we don't have a problem yet. But we're going to see now a second case for him. Akati sabar bioseh en berera. והתניא, עם הארץ שאמר לחבר, קח לי אגודה אחת של ירק, או גלוסקה אחת, אינו צריך לעשר דברי רבי יוסף. This is a case when Am Haaretz, meaning someone who's not so careful with the laws of Tiruman Maaser, and he asks a chaver who is very careful, can you buy me some vegetables or a cake buy it for me. So now, in general, the law is that a chaver, if he buys something for himself, he's always going to take to the ma'an ma'aseh. And even if he gives it to someone else, if he sells it or gives it as a gift to anyone else, the chaver will always make sure to take to the ma'an ma'aseh. Therefore, if I receive something from a chaver, then I don't have to worry. I don't have to take to the ma'an ma'aseh. I can assume that he did it. However, in a case where he, in a case, okay, in a case where he buys it for me, so then the chaver does not have to take to the ma'an ma'aseh because he's not taking ownership of it at all. He's just buying it, and then he's buying it on my behalf, and it's never in his possession. So he's just being a messenger. He's just delivering it. So in that case, he wouldn't have the chaver would not have to take to the ma'aseh, and therefore the person who receives it does. And here we're talking about a case where the chaver buys a lot of food altogether, both for himself and for his friend, but he doesn't separate them. And only afterwards, when he gets home, he says, "Okay, these olives, these grapes, these will be for my friend, and the other ones I'll keep." So now, would you say retroactively, the ones that he gave away were the ones that he meant to not take to the ma'aseh and give over, or not? So that's the problem. So here, eno sarich le'aser, the person receiving it does not have to bring ma'aseh. In other words, we do apply this retroactively. No, sorry, the chaver, right? The person who buys the chaver does not have to take to the ma'aseh. In other words, we do apply retroactively that he designated, this is not mine, this I'm going to give to the other person. And these are the words of the Rabbi Yosef. So here, according to this, Rabbi Yosef does in fact apply berera. So Chachamim omerim sarich la'aser. Chachamim say he does have to. So that's the contradiction between the two statements, and we answer epuch. You know what? Switch them around. It's Chachamim that say that the chaver does not have to, and Rabbi Yosef in fact says he has to. Why does he have to do it? Because he didn't designate to begin with that these are going to be for my friend. He mixed them all up, and therefore we do not apply the definition retroactively. He has to do it now. Okay, so we were able to resolve that question by saying, by reversing it. And in fact, we stick with no. The Rabbi Yosef says no. And here, although he said yes, reversed it, he says no again. And so now a last case for the Rabbi Yosef. Tashema, hamer maaseh sheyesh li bebeti mecholal al sela sheta'aleh biyadi min hakis. The Rabbi Yosef omer mecholal. Okay, someone says, he has maaser sheni that he has to redeem. Right? In other words, he's supposed to eat it in Jerusalem, but he doesn't want to carry it all the way there. So he's going to redeem it instead for money. But he doesn't have the money. He doesn't want to take out the money from his pocket right now. So he just says, maaser that I have in my house will be redeemed for the coin that will come up from my wallet, right? Whichever one it is. So he didn't designate which coin it is. And Rabbi Yosef says, that's okay, mecholal. What do you see from here? That retroactively, when I later on, and now I eat it, right? Later after I eat it, when I go into my pocket and I take out a coin, right? All the coins were the same before. Now retroactively, this coin becomes kodesh. So you see here that he does apply berera. So that's the question. Epoch. Here again we say reverse it. Ema Rabbi Yosef omer lo chilel. So he's going to be the one that says you cannot do it. Now, hold on. Why'd you reverse 1 for 2 instead of 2 for 1? So first, let me just show you here. So here, we said reverse this and reverse this. Well, why reverse 2? Because of this 1 tosefta and demai. If you have 2 against 1, so keep the 2, right? And reverse only the 1. And say that he says yes in all cases. That's the question. Our answer is no. We have to reverse this case, not because we're trying to answer the question, but rather look at the continuation of this Tosefta. תקטן אספה, ומודה רבי יוסף באומר מעשר שיש לי בתוך ביתי, יהיה מחולל על סלע חדשה שתעלה בידי מן הכיס שחילל. And the continuation says Rabbi Yosef agrees that with Chachamim, that you can do it, you can redeem the Maaseh Sheni for the coin if you say the Maaseh that's in my house will be redeemed for a new coin that I take out of my purse. In other words, not just any coin, but a new coin. So you see, he's thinking of a specific coin, and in that case, I agree that it's okay. So that means that originally he said it's not okay, right? So we see that we must have had the wrong version when he said the biomes mechulal. That doesn't make sense with the continuation, and so therefore you have to change it. Let me just show you this. All this is quoting a Tosefta. If we look in the Tosefta in the original, in other words, from the Tosefta manuscripts, also in the Talmud Yerushalmi, it's quoted in the same way. And this is in all manuscripts of the Tosefta. Here's the original case. Someone the So you see the original, the Biose in fact does say you cannot do it. And so therefore you see he does not hold that Bid'ah works. And Chachamim who say Chilel, they say it does work. And right here, this is what's quoting, Modeh Biosel Chamim, and they agree, Biose agrees to Chachamim that you can do it in the case when you say this a new coin, because then you're talking about a more specific type of coin, and so only there does he allow it. In some way, there's no Bid'ah there. Okay, so you see, this is actually a very, very important example because what we see that when the Talmud asks the question and then answers, oh, just reverse it, they're not just saying reverse it because, we're trying to get out of a difficult problem and say, okay, switch it around. That would be easy to solve any problem by just changing the data points, and then you don't have a question. But you see in this case that they simply had two versions of the Baraita, and one of them was misquoted, and they were able to reconstruct the correct version based on the continuation and based on comparing what he said in other cases. Therefore, we have for sure he says no here, for sure he says no here, and therefore, for this case, where we actually, in our version, he says yes, it must be that we have the wrong text, and it must be that he says no here, if in fact we want to resolve all of his opinions. All right, so I think that's a very, very instructive case. Now, one last question about this case. What do you mean he said a new coin? But maybe he has 2 or 3 new coins in there. So you still have the same problem because no one of the coins has been designated. And only afterwards, when I take out whatever first one I take out, new coin I take out, then there'll still be retroactive designation. So rather must be that there's only one new coin. So then it applied to that coin. If so, what's the word my ta'aleh? Whichever one I take out with the new coin, whichever new coin I take out. What do you mean I take out? As if that sounds like you're choosing among multiple. Oh, since the Resha, which was talking about many coins, any coin, and you say whichever one I take out, therefore the Sefer I'd use the same language, but really I don't have to take it out at all. There's only one new coin in there, so I could just leave it in there, and that will be the one it's redeemed upon. Okay, good. So now we've resolved all the problems for the Yehuda and for the Biose, and now we can move on to this question, which is, how about Bid'ah in rabbinic laws? So, Amar Rab Nachman, Man Taitana, Tafilu Mibid Rabbanan let le Bid'ah. Who is the Tana that even in the Rabbanan laws will not apply Bid'ah? Well, we know there must be someone because of the following case. The Tanya Amar LaChamisha, Hareni Me'arev al Eze Mikem She'erseh. Rasiti Yelech, Lo Rasiti Lo Yelech. Someone says, I'm going to make an eruv for one of you. He says this to 5 people, right? And I'll decide on Shabbat which of you can go, right? Maybe a person has 5 students or servants or something, and one of them he's going to want to go and get something for him. And so he doesn't know who, so he's making eruv, and he'll decide later to whom it applies. Rasa mebe'ojom eruvo eruv. And eruva eruv. So let's say he puts the eruv, he puts the bread there Friday afternoon. As long as he decides who it should apply to before it gets dark, that's fine. But if he decides after it gets dark, it's no good. What you see here is that he's not, whoever is the author of this baraita does not apply berera, and this is talking about eruv, which according to most opinions is a halacha midrabanan. So who is the author of this that thinks that you cannot do berera even in the drabanan? Okay. By the way, our Mishnah is also talking about eruv, and so whoever would disagree with it would disagree with our Mishnah. Okay, so Rav Nachman was asked this question. Ishtik v'lamale v'lamidi. He didn't have an answer. He didn't know. So why doesn't he answer him? It's the Braita. Whoever said that Braita of the case of Ayo above, because that Braita said no berera. So he says, well, he never heard that, so he didn't know, or he didn't accept it rather, right? As we said before. We were deciding which one to accept, the Mishnah or that Baraita, so maybe he didn't accept it. Okay, so we still didn't have anybody. Rav Yosef Amar Tana'eh Shakalt Me'alma. What, are there no Tana'im in the world? You took out all the Tana'im? We know plenty of traditions, and here's one that I can quote. Well, how come you're all of a sudden can't think of anybody? Tana'ehi. This is in fact a machloket between two Tana'im. The Tanya. Harini me'arev l'shabbatot shel kol hashana. All great cases that come up. In a way, the structure here of asking each of these Tana'im is almost an excuse to bring up all these fantastic cases that we can spend time analyzing on their own. Okay, someone makes an eruv for the whole year. I put one meal and I leave it there, and I want this meal to be my eruv all year long. Rasiti elech, lo rasiti lo elech. And I'll decide if I want to use that one on a particular Shabbat, then I'll go there and then I'll designate, yes, I want it. That's right, otherwise not. So the law is, rasam be'ojom eruvo eruv, mishechashecha. So if I do it while it's still there before dark, so every Friday before dark, I say, I think I want to go visit my grandma down, lives far away. I want to make the eruv. Another one, I say, no, I don't want it. I want to go the other way. So then it's not an eruv. So if I decide before it gets dark, certainly that's okay according to everybody. But after it gets dark, Rabbi Shimon omer eruvo eruv. Chachamim omerim en eruvo eruv. So here we have a machloket, and Chachamim say you cannot do it. So there you go. These Chachamim who dispute Rabbi Shimon, they are the ones that would say also in this case that you do not apply berera even in a halacha midrabanan. Okay, good. So now we have an answer. We don't have their names, but it's those sages who disagree with Rabbi Shimon in this case. All right. Now we're not settled with this because now you quoted Rabbi Shimon as saying it's okay. You can do berera here. Rabbi Shimon But Rabbi Shimon, that was the last opinion back up here in the Tosefta Demai. That was, remember separating the wine and putting it in caskets afterwards. Rabbi Shimon there said, you do not apply berera. And now you just solved this case by quoting this baraita in which Rabbi Shimon does apply berera. Okay, so now that we resolved this question, we go to the sub-question, which is probably what we wanted to get to all along. Does Rabbi Shimon apply berera? Above here we said no, and now we say yes. So we're going to have 4 different answers to explain Rabbi Shimon. You know what? We have to reverse the opinions. Over here, when we brought this machlot to Rabbi Shimon and Chachamim, reverse those opinions. And actually, it's Rabbi Shimon who does not apply berera, even in a drabanan. Okay, that's answer number 1. My kashya dilma kilet le Rabbi Shimon berera bedeoraita aval bedrabanan itle. Hold on. Why do you have to reverse them? There's no need to do that. In the case, we can make a distinction between Doraita and the Rabbanan. In the Doraita, he says, no, you can't do it. In the Rabbanan, he says, you can do it. And that would explain all the cases. This one over here, this case of Tosefta Demai, that was talking about the Oraita, separating, right? Remember, I bought from a Samaritan. I got some wine, and I have to separate Teruma, Maaser. Those are all the Oraita laws. So I'll say, whatever I separate later, after I drink it, tomorrow, that will retroactively be separated. right? So that's Doraita. There, the Bishimon says, no, you can't do that. But here, in the case of Techum, Eruv Techumin, that's the Rabbanan. And so the Bishimon says it's fine. And so therefore, we don't need the first answer. We can resolve it without reversing. Okay. All right. That sounds like a good idea. Kasabar Rav Yosef. Now, yeah. Yeah, Rav Yosef is not found in all versions. So Kasabar, man itle bedera lashene bedorata lashene bedrabanan itle. Man letle bedera lashene bedorata lashene bedrabanan letle. Okay, the person who said this first answer that to switch them, he must think that you have to be consistent. There's no reason to distinguish between Doraita and Rabbanan. Whoever says Berera will apply it to both, and whoever does not say Berera will apply it to neither. Apparently, according to this version, Berera is a different conception of time and how time works, right? Does it need to always be linear, or can somehow 2 points of time join together and jump backwards and redefine what happened? So if you think that time can work that way, then you will accept it, otherwise not. It doesn't make a difference if it's Doraita or the Rabbanan. According to this, the second answer, who does distinguish, that would seem that it's a din de Rabbanan. The rabbis made a special kula that they built into their Rabbanan law. We won't apply this halacha if someone makes a designation later. But in essence, time does not really work that way. Okay, so this could be, you see, very juicy, very interesting to analyze further. All right, but anyway, so now we have two answers. We're going to try a third. Rabba Amad, Shaneh hatam deba'ainan zeshit shesheyareha nikarin. The first case above, the one in Demai, where the Bishimon says you can't do it, that was talking about bringing tiruma. Tiruma, is something you have to bring first. You have to bring from the beginning of what you start eating. You have to separate it first. So the halacha is that when taking tiruma, it has to be in a way that there are remnants that are recognizable. You can't take it from, it can't be from leftovers, right? You can't eat everything and then whatever is left, that will be tiruma. No, tiruma has to be something that you give from the beginning, from the first. So therefore, it's a special law in tiruma, and that's why in the case of Tosefta Demai, when I get all this wine, I can't simply say whatever is left over will be designated as tiruma. That doesn't work because of tiruma. In other words, he can actually say that there is berera. And so this is how we'll answer the question for the Bishimon. The Bishimon actually does apply berera, and that's why he will apply it in the case of Eruv Techumin, and apply it in other cases too. Only in this case of tiruma, I cannot apply it, not because time doesn't work that way. I can designate things retroactively. It's just that now, when it's applying, it's only applying to something that's leftovers, and there has to be something else that exists when it's designated. Technically, if it really happens totally retroactively, then that was there but we're getting into time paradoxes, and I don't want to break the time-space continuum right now. Okay, and so therefore, that's why it's a special law of tiruma. Amar le'Abaye, ele me'ata yu lefanav shnei rimonim shel tebel. Amar im yerdu geshamim hayom yeheh zeh tiruma al zeh. V'im lo yerdu geshamim hayom yeheh zeh tiruma al zeh. So Abaye is now challenging this answer of Rabbah and saying, well, what if you had a case of 2 pomegranates, tebel, right? I didn't take tiruma, I said, and make a condition, a random condition. If it rains today, this one will be tiruma, and I eat the other one. And if it doesn't rain today, then that one will be tiruma, and I'll eat this one. So hachinameh ben yardu ben lo yardu the en bidvarav klum. Would you agree? Would you say in that case, Rabbah, that this doesn't work? Because there's no leftovers. When at the time that I'm designating it, I can't eat either one. So there's nothing that is not tiruma. There's nothing recognizable as not tiruma. So would you agree in that case? Well, maybe he would. So maybe say yes, in that case also, it doesn't work, right? That would be a kind of retroactive designation. Doesn't work for tiruma. Tiruma takeri hazeh u'masirotav shebetocho ותרומת מעשר זה בתוכו, רבי שמעון אומר, קרא השם. We have a Mishnah actually that says, if I take the teruma within this pile, should be separated, and the maaser in it, and the terumat maaser in it. And so I designate just through verbally, even though I'm not physically taking it away. Rabbi Shimon says that's okay, even though I didn't designate any portion, and only later I'm going to actually physically designate a portion. So on here, Rabbi Shimon says it's fine, right? So doesn't that show that all of this, your logic doesn't work? That in fact teruma can be retroactively separated. So we answer Shanei Hatam Dika Sebibav. In this case, different because I said that's within it. So therefore, the teruma has to be from something in the middle. The outskirts of the whatever's in that bowl certainly are not teruma. I don't know exactly which spot is in the middle, but I certainly know that the outskirts are not. This is kind of like going up to Harabait nowadays. We don't know exactly where the Bet HaMikdash was. There's differences of opinion among archaeologists and among poskim, but we know for sure that the Bet HaMikdash was not on the edges, the extra parts that Herod built up. So therefore, I don't know where it is, but I know where it's not. And so therefore, that's enough for teruma, as long as I know that there are some parts of it that are not teruma. So the teruma will be something, there are leftovers that are not teruma, and therefore that would be okay. So that's what Rava could answer. אמרו לו לרבי מאיר, אי אתה מודה שמא ייבקע הנוד, ונמצא זה שותה תבלים למפרע. אמר להן, לך שייבקע. Or a final answer is in the case of demai up here, where I say I have all this wine and I want to drink it right away. And I say whatever I designate later, that'll be the wine that's teruman maaser. So in that case, there was a conversation. And the rabbis told Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir there was the one who said it's okay, and the other rabbis, including Rabbi Shimon, would have told him, wait, what if the flask breaks? And now, and now you have a problem because you were going to designate to the maaser from what was left over in the nod, but now if it breaks and goes all over the floor, now retroactively you have no possibility of taking to the maaser, and now you have violated eating tebel. So his answer was, okay, when it breaks, we'll deal with that problem. In other words, you're right. Technically, if it does break, then there's no way to take maaser, and the person will have violated. But he's saying it doesn't happen so often. You'll be careful, and hope that doesn't happen. But doesn't mean that you can't do it. But the other rabbis, therefore, are saying that only in that case we don't want to make this retroactive because we're afraid that it won't be there in the future to do it retroactively because it'll break. But otherwise, if it was a different case and you don't have to worry about that, then you could do it, the other things retroactively. And so that is the final answer here. That in the case of Eruv and other cases, we apply Berera only in that Tosefta Demai case, only because we're afraid that the flask will break. That's why we say that. And so that answers the question. Now, just one more point. Uma desalek adatin. Meikara de bainan reshit sheshereha nikarin. Hold on. According to that which we questioned just now, that we said that when you take teruma, there has to be recognizable remnants there, right? You can't take teruma if there's not, unless there's also left something else that will be leftovers. So according to that, what is this objection that the rabbi said to Rabbi Meir that you're afraid it's going to break? You have a prior problem. In other words, you can't it's hard to read this question if their problem really was the third one response, that there's a problem, you can't take teruma at all in such a way. So we answer, so you could answer this way. Those rabbis, Rabbi Shimon said, we think that teruma has to be taken from something that's there at first, and while there's something else that you're not taking teruma from. So according to us, you can't apply retroactive designation in teruma. That's what we think. But now for you, obviously, the B'miyah does not think that that's a problem. Aren't you at least worried that the flask will burst and then you won't be able to take it later? Retroactively, he's eating tebel. And to that is what he answered. I'll worry about it when it happens. But it doesn't. It's not something that happens often. So I'm not going to worry about it now. All right. So we'll be able to read that case, read the continuation of that case just fine. And so now we have resolved all of the contradictions, and actually in multiple ways. And we have this really kind of beautiful structure, kind of three-part structure. And each of the three parts, well, this end has three parts, this has three parts, and this probably I could rearrange this a bit. So to put this here, and that says like 3 and 3 parts. So you see that, if you had to memorize this, it'll be very easy that each section flows into the other. In the end, we have something interesting because for the Bishimon, we were able to resolve that he would say only in the case of Demai, Tosefta Demai, because Tiruma, this should say Tiruma. Tiruma can't be leftovers. Because Tiruma can't be leftovers, that's why you can't do retroactive designation specifically in this case, but in other cases you can. Once we have that answer, actually we could then apply it also to the Bioseh if we wanted. But it happens to be that for the Bioseh, we do in fact have this Tosefta and Maaseh Sheni there where we do have to reverse it. So we would therefore not want to apply it. So you see how this is really key to compare the Tosefta version that we have in Tosefta manuscripts and the Talmud Yerushalmi, which the Bavli itself does quote, because that's a key to understanding why the Bioseh remains as saying no, that the Bedidah does not work, whereas for the Bishimon, we do find a way to say that it does work. All right. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, amen, amen. Thank you for joining.